What's up, everybody? Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down the Vandal versus the Phantom, because we have data that compares pro pick rates across all the regions, and we get to see how dramatically different the pick rates are, and we get to talk about some actionable tips that you can incorporate to not only pick the best gun, but actually give yourself the best chance of popping off with each weapon and dominating your games with either the Phantom or the Vandal. So make sure you watch to the end, smash the like and subscribe, and then go to the Game Loop website in the links down below for high quality, in-depth, advanced guides, tips and tricks, VOD reviews. We got all of it at the Game Loop website on the links down below. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now, a question on many people's minds is always the Phantom versus the Vandal. We talk about how each weapon has strengths and weaknesses, but overall, people are gonna predominantly be playing with one weapon, and many people don't know which weapon they should be putting the majority of their grind time into. Now, in order to help you break down that question, let's look at the pick rates across all regions from the Phantom versus the Vandal. Let's look at it now, and you can see how different it is from region to region. Turkey barely using the Phantom at all, to Korea using quite a bit of the Phantom. And a lot of times we actually analyze NA region and we see 50-50, but if you look here, the regions don't necessarily agree that it's 50-50, and we actually have numbers about the overall pick rate of each weapon. So if we broke it down by actual numbers, it is 15,302 Phantoms and 2,309 Vandals. Now, one person in the Reddit comment section asked if that extra 5k has to do with how many times the map was iceboxed. And they broke this down actually, and for icebox, the stats were 3,821 picks out of 9,120 rounds were for the Vandal, and only 1,650 picks out of 9,120 rounds were for the Phantom. That means the Vandal was picked 41.9% of the time, while the Phantom was only picked 18.09% of the time. So Icebox was very heavily favored of the Vandal, and a significant number of those 5k extra picks. So if you took out Icebox, it would be a lot closer to 50-50, but Icebox is a map that is a very heavily Vandal map. Very long sightlines, high grounds, long angles. You really want the one-tap capability of a Vandal, and it's a lot less swing-oriented. It's a lot less rapid control and smoke oriented. There's no natural smokes that you could block off certain choke points either, so having the additional wall bang ability or the spray ability of a Phantom without the tracer, that is not as powerful. So for a lot of different factors, the Vandal is far superior on Icebox specifically. So in general, unless you have a really strong preference towards the Phantom, the Vandal might be the weapon that you want to use more often on Icebox in particular. But let's talk about all the maps as a whole, or just the game as a whole, because a lot of people have some trouble picking the Vandal over the Phantom. Now, overall, the actual regions are split about the power level of the Vandal versus the Phantom throughout the maps. We broke down many of the strengths of each weapon, how the Vandal is much better at taking duels, much more reliable, and the Phantom is a much more flexible weapon. It's objectively better, which is an interesting statement because someone actually talks about this in the comments, and I wanted to read what they had to say because this is something that I think a lot of people will actually deal with when they're playing with the Phantom over the Vandal, and I think it's extremely important. And he stated this, quote, "The Phantom is the perfect example of objectively better but worse. I think it's more psychological, but my crosshair placement with Phantom is a lot lazier, and I commit to sprays way more when I should just burst. While with the Vandal, I'm much more patient and much more mindful of my crosshair placement." Now, this is something that I myself actually struggled with, and I know a lot of people struggle with, but it was really hard for me to kind of put it into words, and this summed it up perfectly, where if you are using a weapon that is more forgiving, sometimes you automatically become more lazy with your aim as well. And I think that's a really big problem for people that switch back and forth between the weapons. Sometimes you're extremely disciplined on the Vandal and you're much more loose on the Phantom, when you really should be disciplined with both weapons. But because of that certain amount of forgiveness on the Phantom, it's like an automatic, natural psychological thing that happens. This is also why I think it's really important for you to practice a fair amount with the Phantom in all your training sessions, and specifically free-for-all, because overall, remember that the Vandal gives you an advantage when you're taking 1v1 duels, right? Well, free-for-all is a lot of that. You're taking consistent 1v1 duels over and over again, and because of that, I think that a lot of people that are practicing free-for-all predominantly use the Vandal because it gives you an advantage, but then that actually makes it so that you really train your fundamentals only with the Vandal, or you do it a lot more than with the Phantom because of that kind of imbalance with specifically free-for-all, even if the Phantom is a much more balanced weapon when we're talking about rank play. But a lot of the good aspects of the Phantom are things that you can really utilize throughout a ranked game, not a free-for-all game. So that's just something that you need to understand. Just because you might be performing not as well with the Vandal in free-for-all doesn't mean you should naturally choose it, and in fact, it could be creating a certain amount of laziness with your gunplay discipline on the Phantom that is causing you to think a lot worse about the gun overall. That being said, I think one of the most underrated aspects about picking between the Vandal versus the Phantom is acknowledging their strengths and specifically your individual playstyle, because you want to pick the weapon that exemplifies or strengthens your predominant playstyle, the one that you naturally like to do. Let's say you're someone who really likes to aggressively take duels, you like to aggressively take angles, and you want to try to build up your aim to where you can do this, and you want to have that sort of aggression, that sort of confidence in your play, and you want to have impact in that way. Then the Vandal is the obvious choice. Even if it might not give you as much value right off the bat, it's the weapon that will enable that type of play, and I think it's worthwhile to go with the grain or go with your natural tendencies as a player if that is something that you want to do and that's your strengths. However, the Phantom is far better at close fighting, taking multiple fights, or holding onto a site. If you're someone who would much rather play around utility, play around the site, allow people to come to you, or aggressively push through smokes, play around your smokes, and different things like that, then the Phantom is gonna shine naturally with your playstyle a lot more. If there should be any takeaway from this data that we analyze, it's that both weapons are viable and both weapons can be used, and you can basically pick which weapon you want to use. You can either mix it up from game to game, round to round, situation to situation, or you can pick just one of the weapons and you can climb with just one of the weapons. That is perfectly fine. If it's viable in pro play, it's viable in any ranked game. Now, I know that it can be incredibly easy to just look at 10s or look at your favorite pro player and see what guns they like to use and use the gun that they like to use, but you gotta understand the differences in your playstyle. Not only character to character, role to role, but individually, how do you play your character and what weapon exemplifies that strength or the way that you like to play the game. And that's the big takeaway in this video. That's basically what I want to actually nail home for each and every one of you who can't decide, or it's constantly go back and forth, or doesn't really know what they want. At the end of the day, both weapons have strengths and weaknesses, both weapons are viable, and one weapon is naturally going to fit in with your playstyle more than the other. But if you have any questions or comments, definitely let me know in the comments down below. Smash that like and subscribe, and then go to the Game Leap website for in-depth advanced guides, VOD reviews, tips, and tricks. We have specific Phantom and Vandal guides, so if you want to specifically improve at either of these weapons, you got to go check it out in the Game Leap website, and the link's down below. But thank you so much for coming by. That's all I got for you today. Smash that like and subscribe. I love your faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.